rangatira. Te iwi nā hine pūkohurangi, nā mātou te maringa nui kua whakae tō tātou rangatira, kia kōrero tahi tātou, ki ana whakaaro. No reira, kai taku rangatira, taku manu taiko, nei te reo mihi mai a māua, mai a tātou, tēnā koe, tēnā koe, tēnā koe.
Tēnā kōrua, nā mihi nui kia kōrua.
Tēnā koe, Papa. So, kai a koe te rākau i tēnei wā e te Papa. Tēnā kōrero mai, he aha o whakaaro, he aha te kaupapa, ka kōrero nei koe.
Kia ora tātou. Probably the first apologies to the sign language translator, who's got most of the work to do during my presentation. But I want to cover just 4 themes, really. One is the return to Te Mana Motuhake or Tūhoe. Secondly, how the arts is connected to the iwi and the collection of the iwi to the land. And also want to talk about how art is critical to our identity and how art and being iwi is something special as well. So those are my themes. So I'll just get started. I want to say that I believe dreaming is a form of planning. And so in the return journey of Tūhoe to Mana Motuhake, which is searching for maximum autonomy, in 2011, after 2 years of conversation and discussion with many Tūhoe people, we then published a blueprint, which was envisioning what we would look like in 40 years' time. We dreamt about being at a different space, being better than we were at that time. So our blueprint looked at where we would be in 40 years' time. So we've done around 10 years already of that. Also in 2011, with the Crown, we signed a political compact. Because we were not signatories to the Tiriti o Waitangi, we then composed with the Crown something a lot more personal and customized. And in the political compact signed on the 2nd of July 2011 in Ruatahuna, it mentions the Crown's acknowledgement of Te Mana Motuhake o Tūhoe. That is our quest for maximum autonomy. So that then followed in 2014 with our legislation and our settlement. And probably the most celebrated part of that was that the Te Huarewa National Park disappeared, and then the Parliament of New Zealand and the laws of New Zealand recognized land as a living person. This has been for centuries, for millennia, the belief and the practice of all indigenous people. Mother Earth, that is the land. The Tūhoe settlement was not about quantum or a financial compensation, but it was around justice, something that the Crown could not deliver, but it was something that Tūhoe sought. And the next 40 years is going to be our endeavor and our effort to bring about peace, justice, and truth for ourselves. So now Tūhoe lives in a post-settlement world, like many other iwi that have secured a treaty settlement but still find themselves unsettled. Our enemy now is dependency. we are trying to undo the evil of entitlement, the selfishness of individualism, and the destructive powers of ownership. We're trying to restore living by principles rather than by any means possible. We want to fit and be kind with our environment as well as with each other. In order to do that, we have to take massive, determined actions rather than proud, poetic words. So, in order to avoid a reputational disaster for Tūhoe, we understood from the start that the source of our trauma, which is the system that had been imposed on us, will not be the source for our answers. We had to escape the frame that we've been captured in for nearly 200 years, that our liberty and our answers comes outside of that frame. That decision immediately brought pain, but it also demanded inspiration. So that about summarizes our journey and our experience. Distant waters cannot put out the nearby fires that burn the heart of Indigenous people, the pain, the hurt, and the loss. Only nearby waters, by their own hand, can do that. We were never expecting this change to be easy, but we need it to be of worth to our great-grandchildren. So, persistence to get where we are and consistency to keep it. For Tūhoe, we believe that deep in nature is our nature and our understanding of everything. And that if our hearts cannot decide what to do, then we torture our minds and we live in a world of words without action. So that is what we have to do, is to commit ourselves to determined massive actions. Awkward, uncomfortable, but nevertheless unavoidable. That is the journey of returning to Te Mana Motuhake or Tūhoe. Art does help in connecting iwi with their land. We have to remind ourselves that iwi are not corporate organizations, which we fall into that trap by the fact that we negotiate a financial compensation with the Crown through treaty settlements. It's quite a battle to remind yourself that iwi are kinship organizations that have always had government responsibilities and government role and functions. It's just that colonization has faded that away and has almost turned us into mere charitable trusts. We must regain the belief that we are, first and foremost, a kinship organization that has government duties. As an iwi, We proudly say we have a common culture, a common language, a common territory, and we have a world view of our heritage, our connection with the planet, with the universe. Instinctively, we are interdependent with each other. Over generations, we have synthesized macro and microcosm principles into our lifestyles. Our belief systems come from nature. That is their origin. Our tikana, our language, even the way we look, the way we behave, originates from nature, from our place, from our rohe. In former times, our economies were self-sufficient and was based around the whakaro, the idea of dynamic equilibrium. And law and order depended on collective responsibilities and customary mores, not police forces, not courts, not jails. These are the things that we have lost. And now in this post-settlement world, we are looking for ways to restore these things as best we can. Some may be lost forever and have to be redesigned. But this is our task. Art, it is. This work requires artistry. We have been described as a primitive society, and the irony is that in Latin, primus, primitive means first, and itivus means the best of its kind. So, if we are a primitive society, then in Latin that means the best society. In 1872, after military conflict with the Crown, Tūhoe decided that they would take the tack of passive resistance. A group called the Whitutekau was formed. They designed flags, and to lift the spirit of Tūhoe, all the artists of Tūhoe were called together to build the great house, Te Whaia Te Motu, which still stands today in Ruatahuna. Te Whaia Te Motu was a metaphor for saying we are still alive, we dream, we hope, things will change. And so, where I am speaking to you from, Te Kura Whare, the living building, is also a metaphor based on that principle of Te Whaia Te Motu. So, architecture, art, has always been used to inspire and to bring about spirit to people. Te Whaia Te Motu asks the question of what is the island, what is the old Māori yearning for? Hea ha te whai a te motu. What are we seeking? Well, in Tūhoe's view, we are seeking justice, peace, and truth. You see, the poorest man is not the one without money, but the one without a people. So we are wanting to restore our people. This is the land that gives us our name and heritage. Everything about being Tūhoe comes from Te Urawera. Our fate as an iwi is tied with the fate of this land. And we know there are no owners in nature. And that colonization was an effort to create others in another person's image. So we are finding ourselves artists, and art can help in that journey, in that rediscovery. So here we are 200 years post-colonization, trying to find ourselves. And it is quite evident that the facts of our lives today does not fit the principles of where our hearts are. Therefore, we need to change the facts. We don't change the principles, we change the facts of our existence today. There are two ways to be happy, someone says. Either you adjust your reality, that is, accept that change must take place and that you are the agent of that change, or you lower your expectations and accept servitude. So for Tūhoe, our origin, our presence and our future will always be our tūhoetanga and te urewera. We have to unlearn many things, relearn a multitude of other things in order to mend and fix ourselves. That is our objective. We don't know how long that will take. We don't know how much our hearts can take of this pain and of the inspiration that we need to do this. Our identity and the arts is an interesting place to be. I think as people living together with a Pākehā, Māori, and many other ethnicities, in such a short time, 200 years, we have been trialing and going through processes for our sense of belonging. We have words like citizenship. That's a tag, that's a form of identity, being a citizen. For others, it's being a taxpayer. That's a form of identity. For others, simply describe themselves as ratepayers and residents. Over 100 years, we've been playing around with symbols, with imagery, with mottos. We've been trying to describe a common look amongst ourselves. We've put forward theories of our shared attitude towards life, what we sound like, our language. We have anthems that we've mucked around with. We're exploring whether we believe in the same things, whether we have values. All of this, in my view, is really good. These are good conversations. These are good debates, because it is around finding out who we are now. And we explore who we were before in order to inform and agree, hopefully, who we are now. So the search and the need for an authentic national identity has already been played out by ourselves. Many are unaware of it. There are others that resist it because they believe that our national identity is already fixed. We've stolen somebody's name, New Zealand, and that's good enough for many people. For others, it is totally inadequate. So, the art and the artists are suggesting that our national identity, in order to be authentic, need to reflect our place, the landscape of this country. It needs to express our pedigree now. It's a new pedigree. It's a diverse pedigree. My suggestion has always been that we are tanata whenua. Tanata whenua is not an ethnic term, but it's a principal term that suggests these are people that care and love the land. They don't need to own it. They care for the land, they love the land, they regard themselves as having come from the land and returning to the land. I hope one day that in generations to come, we will be comfortable with calling ourselves Tāmati Māori, Tāmati Whenua. The New Zealander and Kiwi titles fall short of that mark. So, this search for identity through art, it will not be honey without the bees. We will be stung throughout that journey. But, you know, kindred spirits, we allow us to tell each other 1,000 things without being reliant on words. Artists know this. So to know each other is not only to know each other's face, but to know each other's heart. That's where our identity will come from, the connectivity of our hearts, not really those shallow synthetic signals. So I don't think we would require many words to find and speak the truth about who we have become. We do wish to be deserving heirs to the spirit and the beliefs of being a human being in the 21st, 22nd century. Art reveals our soul and our nature. Art feeds our minds and moves our heart. Art that is delightfully percussive, that allows us to reimagine who we are now and what we have become. That, I think, is the place and the role of artists, all artists today. So, my last theme was about iwi and the arts. For Māori art generally, or tribal art, art is coded advice. It's highly cryptic, highly symbolic and metaphoric. For example, tukutuku. After Te Rangi Tau Ngāwha, which is the battle of the gods that ended up in the separation of Rangi and Papa, Tanaroa and Tāne were at war with each other, and it was Tāne, wasn't it, that approached his tuakana Tanaroa and plucked his eyebrow and gave it to Tanaroa as a peace treaty. And his tukemata was a pinao plant that grows on the sand dunes. And so the pinao became the child shared by Tāne and Tanaroa in order to establish peace. The young pinao was accepted as a whānau by Tanaroa, a gift from his teina Tāne. Pinao fell in love with kākahoroa, that plant that grows by the sea. but Kākahoroa was in love with the kahikatea of the great forest. So the heart of Pina was broken because of unrequited love from Kākaho. Knowing all of this, Tāne and Tanarua, through human hands, created tukutuku, bringing together the Pinao, bringing together the Kākaho, bringing together the kahikatea trees, and then putting up tukutuku work that adorn our wharenui. There it is, the metaphor of peace, justice, the metaphor then for us to be united by our wharenui, by that artwork. And a lot of these stories about the origins and the purpose of art are everywhere. So our marae, these are sites of pilgrimage and rituals. They are the light from humanity's vital spark that is brought forth by artists and art. Culture, iwi culture, is transcendent, meaning it defies gravity, time, and space. Culture collapses time and space. Art are the epiphanies that create culture and our sense that we are civilized. Art can overcome our fear of all that can separate us from being alive and being forgotten. And artists, well, artists are those crazy people who care and cry for humanity. So they are the ones that are capable of straightening out our souls. So, e hika mā to all of you, may your feet bring you to where your heart is. Kia ora tata. Thank you.
Tēnā koe kei te pāpā. Nui ngā kōrero, nui ngā whakaaro kua puta mai I tō kōrero. Me te mihi anō kia koe kei taku whatukura. At this time, we're going to be saying goodbye to our friends that have joined us on social media, and then we're going to be heading off to our Q&A session through that we've got, and I see there's a few questions that have already been lined up in the app. So, tēnā koutou, thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys next time. And for those of us who are left here, we've got a